Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're diving into a game that absolutely made history. If you're a fan of baseball history, unbelievable pitching, and those really high-stakes moments, you are in for an absolute treat. We're breaking down the 96th MLB All-Star Game. Now this year, the Midsummer Classic took place at Citizens Bank Park in Philadelphia, right as the U.S. was celebrating its 250th birthday. But despite that incredible patriotic hometown stage being perfectly set for the National League, this game just turned into a showcase of absolute, undeniable dominance by the American League. The whole thing was capped off with a stunning 4-0 shutout. But before we get bogged down in the heavy statistics and the play-by-play of this historic shutdown, I want to ground us in the real emotion of the event. We're all still those little kids with big dreams. Those are the words of the 2026 All-Star Game MVP Cody Bellinger of the New York Yankees. After the game, while he was holding that iconic Ted Williams MVP trophy, his two young daughters were literally playing in the dirt in the batter's boxes nearby. It's just the perfect reminder that beneath the bright lights, the massive home runs, and the 97-mile-per-hour fastballs, this is still a game. It's a kid's game played by adults who have simply mastered their craft. And that pure joy, that's exactly what fueled how Bellinger and the American League engineered this victory.
All right, Section 1, an explosive first inning.
Okay, let's dive right into this. To really understand how this game was won, we have to look at how it started, because the American League established this insurmountable lead right out of the gate. Let's walk through this rapid-fire sequence. The game opened in a highly charged atmosphere. The Philly crowd was totally ready to cheer on their hometown ace, Christopher Sanchez, who was starting for the NL. But the AL hitters? Yeah, they had other plans. By 8:05 p.m., the bases were already loaded thanks to a single by Yordan Alvarez and walks from Shea Longier and Bobby Witt Jr. Then, with 2 outs at 8:15 p.m., Cody Bellinger completely silenced the crowd by lining a sharp 2-run single to center field. Just 3 minutes later, 8:18 p.m., his Yankees teammate Ben Rice steps up and grounds another single right through the middle, driving in a third run. By 8:22 p.m., the top of the first inning ended, and the AL had a 3-0 lead. The host city crowd was absolutely stunned.
What makes that sequence so incredibly rare is that this was the first time since 1962 that two Yankees players recorded RBIs in the exact same All-Star game. Now, the Philadelphia crowd booed Bellinger and Rice lustily, which, is exactly what you'd expect from a passionate Phillies fan base facing Yankees players. But those two cemented their names in baseball history. The last duo to do it? Roger Maris and Tom Tresh at Wrigley Field. Bellinger and Rice are only the 7th group of Yankees hitters ever to record RBIs in the same Midsummer Classic. That puts their names alongside absolute legends like Joe DiMaggio, Lou Gehrig, and Babe Ruth. Pretty crazy, right? Moving right along to Section 2, a historic pitching masterclass. So the offense grabbed the headlines early, and obviously Bellinger's hit eventually secured him the MVP honors. But once the AL got that early lead, it was their pitching staff that completely choked the life out of a National League lineup. 15. That represents the massive total number of strikeouts recorded by American League pitchers in this game. To put that into perspective, it fell just one single strikeout short of the all-time record for a 9-inning All-Star Game, which was 16 set back in 2019. The AL pitchers didn't just hold the lead, they completely overpowered the absolute best hitters the National League had to offer.
The final box score tells a story of absolute suffocating dominance. 0 runs, only 3 hits, and they were all singles, by the way, and 15 strikeouts. Literally no National League runner even reached second base the entire night. This was only the 10th shutout in All-Star Game history, and the very first one since 2013. But what's truly staggering is the collective effort of the AL bullpen. Manager John Schneider used 11 different pitchers, and get this, 10 of them recorded at least 1 strikeout. They just kept rolling out fresh arms, and the NL hitters simply had no answers.
And the tone for this pitching masterclass? It was set immediately in the bottom of the first inning by the Blue Jays' Dylan Cease. Tasked with protecting that brand new 3-0 lead, Cease was absolutely ruthless. He became the first pitcher to strike out 3 batters in the first inning of an All-Star game since Brad Penny did it way back in 2006. He blew right past Kyle Schwarber, Juan Soto, and C.J. Abrams. By doing that, he joined this hyper-exclusive club of only 7 pitchers ever to accomplish this, a list that includes icons like Pedro Martinez, Jim Palmer, and Carl Hubble.
All right, let's look at Section 3, standout individual performances.
While the overarching story was obviously the American League's team dominance, baseball is ultimately a game of individual matchups, and amazingly, not all the incredible pitching came from the AL. The National League had a phenomenal standout performance of their own, courtesy of Dodgers left-hander Justin Robleski. And the best part? He did it on his 26th birthday. Wrobleski came into the game in the 7th inning and struck out the side, swinging. Then he came back out for the 8th and picked up 2 more strikeouts. 5 strikeouts in a single All-Star game. Nobody has done that since the legendary Pedro Martinez did it at Fenway Park in 1999. Since then, 43 different players had pitched 2 innings in a Midsummer Classic, but none had managed to fan 5 hitters until the birthday boy stepped on the mound.
However, Wrobleski wasn't totally invincible. And that brings us to our next number, 433. That is the distance in feet of the monster home run hit by Miguel Vargas of the White Sox in the 8th inning. Vargas crushed that ball into the second deck in left field off of Wrobleski to seal the final 4-0 score. What's wild about this is that at 433 feet, this blast tied for the 3rd longest home run hit in the All-Star Game since StatCast began tracking in 2015. Adding a brilliant bit of drama to the whole thing, Vargas and Wrobleski actually used to be teammates on the Dodgers before Vargas was traded in 2024. So Vargas definitely got the better of his former teammate on that swing.
Now, amidst all these fireworks and historic stats, there was one moment that made literally everyone in the stadium hold their breath. In the 3rd inning, the Tampa Bay Rays' young, growing legend, Junior Caminero, was struck on the outside of his left hand by a 97-mile-per-hour sinker from Riley O'Brien. He crumbled to the ground in visible pain and actually had to leave the game. For a minute there, the joy of the exhibition faded into some real tension. But thankfully, X-rays came back completely negative. You could practically hear the collective sigh of relief from St. Petersburg and baseball fans everywhere.
Okay, final part, Section 4, AL Historical Dominance.
Let's step back for a second to view the bigger picture. We've looked at the amazing 4-0 shutout in isolation. But why does this specific game matter in the grand scheme of baseball history? Well, with this victory, the American League continues to stretch its all-time lead over the National League. The all-time record now sits at 49 wins for the American League, 45 for the National League, and 2 ties. What was once a highly competitive, back-and-forth rivalry across the decades is slowly but surely tipping heavily in favor of the AL.
But the true extent of this dynasty? That is revealed in the modern era. Check this out. In the last 29 All-Star Games, the American League has won 23 times. Just let that sink in. 23-6. Despite whatever narratives we hear during the regular season about which league has the best teams or the deepest rosters, when it comes down to the Midsummer Classic, the American League simply owns this event right now. They've won 11 of the last 13 games. It's a level of dominance that frankly defies the odds of an exhibition game featuring evenly matched superstars. Which leaves us with this final thought. The American League has planted their flag in Philadelphia and extended their historic, suffocating lead over the National League. But next year, the Midsummer Classic travels to the friendly confines of Wrigley Field on July 13, 2027. So the question we have to ask is, can the National League finally bounce back on their home turf, or are we simply witnessing a permanent shift in the balance of all-star power? And actually, just as a really fascinating side note to leave you with, next year's game coincidentally falls on the 32nd birthday of this year's MVP, Cody Bellinger. Could we see another birthday masterclass? I guess we'll have to wait until next summer to find out. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep asking questions.